Got it. Whoa. Keep a low for me.
Andy, I missed you yesterday. I was invited
Mr.
by
Tate,
Road
we're
to
live.
Maryland.
Thank
Good to see
you. Thanks. It is Thursday, March 9, 2023. This is a meeting of the Facilities and Finance Committee of the Council Rock School District Board of School Directors. I'm chairing tonight, co-chair of the committee, Ed Tate, and we'll go around and have folks introduce themselves around the table, and then in the audience to my left.
Marion McKee, School Board.
Steve Thomas, School Board.
Michael Roosevelt, School Board.
Bob Hickey, School Board. Ed Salomon, School Board.
Matt Frederickson, IT Director.
Jessica Benda, Supervisor of Facilities.
Andy Sanko, Superintendent.
Anthony Rapp, Director of Business Administration.
Doug Taylor, doing engineering.
Colin Page, doing engineering.
Jeremy Moore, financial advisors.
Matt Viscossi, public.
Welcome. Thank you. Let's move forward with the...
Excuse me, Mr. Tate.
Yeah.
Michael Thor came in.
Pardon me.
Oh, Mike Thor, School Board.
There you go.
Now we got everybody?
One more.
Good. All right. We'll get Kevin when we, Kevin Carpick just joined us in Cornerstone. So we'll start with the facilities items as the agenda has. First of all, Supervisor of Facilities, Jessica Bender Richow is going to present.
Thank you.
Please.
Oh, you're already there. So tonight we will discuss the Richboro Elementary School additions and renovations, both the construction bids and the recommendations, and then also the professional services. Then we'll discuss the Schrader Group contract amendment for Richboro Elementary and the Soul Finestone Elementary School additions and renovations mechanical contract change order. And we'll also discuss the Chancellor Center renovations. Okay, within the Richboro Elementary School additions and renovations, we'll discuss the 4 prime contracts, general, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, along with the professional services of construction waste management services, testing, adjusting, and balancing tab services, construction testing and special inspection, and then moving services. Before I hand it over to Dewey, I do just want to say that the bids did come in very favorable. I do want to commend both Dewey and Schrader for holding to a budget and designing to a budget. I cannot tell you how many projects I've been involved with that the designer completely blew the budget, and then you get into a meeting like this and you're asking for more money. That's not the case here, so kudos to both Dewey and Schrader. So with that, I'll hand it over to Doug.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm proud of that history we have. Okay, thank you. We've had about 10 major projects like this, and I think everyone has been a meeting similar to what we'll have tonight. So it's really congratulations to the whole room, the board, for the leadership on all of these projects. This is the plan. I don't think we need to spend much time on it, other than we do have the alternates for the classroom wing on the top of the sheet, kind of extending left to right, the classroom addition. There's a 5 classroom addition. About where it says classroom addition is the hallway, and then the other 5 above it. So it gives us the ability to choose the 5 or the 10. In any case, above it further is the retaining wall and the learning center, which need to happen in order to provide us the space we need for that addition. And this is the plan. And again, at the very top of the sheet, you can see the row of 5 plus the row of 5. The other pieces of addition are at the bottom, the admin addition, and off to the right, about halfway up the sheet, the building services area. Very similar to what we did at the Hillcrest Elementary School project. So we did receive bids, and as Jess said, we received very favorable bids. There are a series of alternates in here. I won't spend a lot of time talking about any unless you want me to hit the brakes, and I'm happy to elaborate. As I said, there's the 5 classroom addition and the 10 classroom addition. When you combine the mechanical, plumbing, electrical, and GC, as Jess said, you can see there's about a 2.9 million for the 5, and about 4.1 or 4.2 for the 10, which are pretty favorable numbers based upon the estimates that we had prepared early on in this project. The other alternates so those two alternates aren't necessarily recommendations, because I think it really comes down to what, the team feels is best, the administration and the board. These are the ones that we would recommend outside of those. The unclassified rock excavation is $16,000. That basically means any rock that the contractor encounter on the site, they're required to remove at their cost. We're paying $16,000 up front, anticipating that they'll encounter more than $16,000 worth of rock. Based upon the geotech reports, we would expect to find more rock than that when they do so. Alternate 7, 7A, and 7B are basically taking a roof that is a 20-year warranty and extending it to a 30-year warranty. And for about, it depends on which bid you take, 18 cents a square foot for the base bid, or 32 cents a square foot for the 5 or 10, to add 10 years to the warranty, extending that roof warranty to 2054. I'll be around to check that roof, I'm sure. Really good numbers to consider accepting that. The new terrazzo floors in lieu of the quartz tile floors, the reason that we would recommend that on this project specifically is that a few years back, there was some water issues in that building where it must have been a Friday evening. We lost one of the braided lines on the hot water at a sink. The building basically flooded, and we had water in all the hallways. We did some quick work. It was humid. We had to replace ceiling tile. So a lot of that quarry tile is delaminated from the substrate. So we would recommend on this project taking that alternate and putting in a new sound terrazzo floor in these hallways. It will give you a 30-year floor. You won't replace the quartz tile in every 10 to 15 years. Over the time, it will pay itself off in those 30 years. There is no alternate 9. And alternate 10A is Johnson Controls versus an open protocol. If you don't put in some sort of alternate for controls, you will get yourself in trouble a bit. So we try to encourage competition between the major controls manufacturers. Otherwise, you'll pay more per square foot than you want to pay for controls. So Johnson Controls gave us a very favorable number. Actually got credit from the mechanical contractor to accept Johnson in lieu of an open protocol system. So we would absolutely recommend this. I think it's the controls of your choice, and most of the district is Johnson Controls.
Hold up, before you move on.
Yes, sir.
Does Hillcrest have terrazzo floors?
No.
Does Sophiestone have terrazzo floors?
Well, Feinstein is not.
What about the rest of the buildings?
There is terrazzo in middle schools, there is in south, is north,
North has terrazzo. Rolling Hills, we actually did terrazzo Rolling Hills.
so there's a hodgepodge of floors throughout the district.
I'm still taken aback it wasn't done at Hillcrest.
Mhm.
I'm seriously taken aback it wasn't done at Hillcrest. I'm seriously taken aback with all the money we spent on Sophiestone it wasn't done. And now we're coming back to doing it again. I'll stop. Go ahead.
It's fair. It's a fair statement.
Doug, on that note, if we don't do it, you talked about the current flooring is I don't want to say an issue, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but you made a comment about the current flooring.
If we don't do it, the contractor is required to sound the floor, so they'll go through and they'll look for all the areas that are delaminated. They're responsible to repair those areas, then put a system over top of the quarry tile that's in place and put a new quartz tile floor system over it, and that will feather out and flush into the classrooms that are adjacent to it. This alternate requires all the tile to be removed, the wet bed that's underneath it to be removed, a new 2-inch infill with terrazzo on top of it. There's the only concern would be any kind of future delamination that could happen in that building that would compromise the new floor on top of it. We will sound and make sure that anything that's problematic today will be replaced, but I worry long term with what could happen just because of what happened in that building prior. certainly wouldn't have to take this, and, you know, again, you could save another $450,000 by not. And that's, you know, that's something you'd want to consider that makes sense.
I recall having conversations on this topic, on terrazzo floors. Why aren't we using terrazzo floors? Who made the decision to delete them? Were they always in the spec? And I think that the response at one point was that you were looking to have a difference of the terrazzo at the middle schools, but we do have them at the high schools as well. And I think the board wanted to be involved a little bit more in that decision, so I'm happy to see it here, but at the same point, I think that we were disappointed that we didn't get to see it then. Similarly, the roof warranty. So in the specifications, when we put out the bid, did we include terrazzo floors? Did we include a 30-year roof warranty and a 30-year roof? And to the question of the quarry tile, did we specify an under slab vapor barrier?
So the quarry tile's existing, right, from 1980s.
Right.
So that system, you know, has some sort of, you know,
So, yeah,
beneath the stone, right?
yeah, and then for the, included in the terrazzo alternate is a vapor moisture product, MEP we call it, and that would be included with the terrazzo alternate. And like Doug said, there is a vapor barrier under the existing slab, if you want to call it that. It's not to the standard that we would specify now,
Right.
but it is there. I mean, to put in a new vapor barrier, that would,
Well,
you would
yeah.
have to remove the slab entirely.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and that's what I'm talking about. I want to be clear, I'm talking about the new part. Obviously, we can't lift the building up
Yeah.
and put a vapor barrier
Right.
under a
Both
school.
would have a vapor barrier
Okay.
with these systems.
But under the new slabs for the 5 and/or the 10 edition, we're calling for
A vapor barrier.
a vapor barrier.
That's correct. And all interior slab would have a
Okay.
Yeah, and the vapor barrier of today's standards, right? The joints and everything is, you know, not like overlap plastic and punctured, and no one really respected the barriers back then as they do today. People recognize the issues with moisture.
Right, yeah.
Doug, you said the terrazzo floor would have a expected life of 30 years, and.
But with that 30 years, you can refinish them and you can repair cracks. So after 30 years is usually when you're going to sand them down and refinish them. But I mean, I have seen terrazzo floors that are over 100 years old, and when you sand them down, the stains come right up and they look brand new.
That's a greater than 30 years.
Yeah.
And then the tile floor wouldn't be,
I mean, if you look at it, the life cycle cost of any tile floor, it depends how long you want to look at the floor, you know, as a tiled floor, you know, probably 15 years, 20 years. It's not like the floors that we knew in classrooms that had the asbestos word in them. Those floors lasted a long, long time, but products aren't made that way anymore.
Right. Thank goodness.
So the tiles today do not last nearly as long as those ones did.
But I'll interject in, didn't do it in our last 2 projects.
Yeah,
And it
and
just, for some reason, we didn't do it.
In
Now
retro-
we're doing it again.
yeah, in retrospect, that appears to be a mistake at this point.
Yeah, big one, yeah.
So I also think it's good, the board has asked to see more alternates broken out so that we can have some discussion and decision-making about where we spend money on projects. And I think this is good to have these alternatives. Are there questions about these alternates?
Yeah, I do, please.
Yeah.
Look, I just wanted, for clarification, I do agree with Mike, and you know how I feel about the terrazzo floors. What's your level of concern about not doing the alternate with the flooring?
I mean,
I'm concerned, knowing that you've had wetness and concern, what don't we know that's there? And are we lipsticking something that we're gonna come back in 5, 10 years and say, shoulda, coulda, woulda, and move on?
That's our concern, you know, Trader Group, Dewey, the concern is, you know, what could happen to that floor down the road. Obviously, we're gonna sound the floor, the contractor's going to own, making sure that the substrate is in sound condition the day they put the tiles in, but you know, if something becomes delaminated at an area they didn't repair, they're going to argue that they did everything they needed to do when they put the floor down. If it becomes delaminated where they did the work, then we can argue and say, okay, well, it's a workmanship issue. But if it's an area where we thought the floor was fine and the floor went down and it becomes a problem, then it's a little bit harder to argue.
Yeah, and are you-
Unless we know it's a material.
And on the surface, are you, I mean, let's be real here, I mean, I'm a little concerned about doing that.
Personally, I would put terrazzo down in any building that I would manage if the budget would tolerate. And, you know, you got favorable bids, you know, the project can afford it in the base 5 and 10 scenarios. So I would consider this, you know, if I were you, but that we'll do everything we can to manage the quartz tile floor, you know, to protect you as well. So, you know, there's just a little bit more of risk with it. Under this scenario, they're tearing it down to the old recessed slab below and putting in a new, you know, concrete finish and then the terrazzo, so with the moisture barrier. So obviously that's the better way to go if you can afford it. Right.
Any other questions? Okay.
Just, I mean, finish the answer. We got sidetracked on the vapor barrier. The original spec, did that include for the roofing, the Johnson controls, and some of these other things, or did we leave them out and now we're talking about adding them in?
No, we own a 20-year roof base bid. If you want to go to a 30-year roof.
Yeah, but why would we have a 20-year?
20 years standard, the 30 years
Yeah,
an
but-
increase.
Yeah, but 30 years is, I would dispute 20 years as standard. I mean, we've got 30, 50-year roofs out there. So,
They're just cost control measures. You know, when you put these bids together, you're not sure where your numbers are going to come in. Sometimes the difference between a 20 and a 30 is substantially more. We've got very favorable, I mean, we're talking about $11,000, $12,000 or $13,000 more to go with those roofs. It's just showing you what the costs are, really.
so we didn't spec, we spec'd in the original bid was for a 20-year roof.
The base bid's 20,
Okay.
the alternate's 30.
And we did not include in the bid Johnson controls.
We did. We include Siemens controls, Johnson controls, and we had an open protocol, so they could come in and do Ecotrol or some other system
Right.
through the Medisys system, or we can specifically use Johnson or Siemens. This gives you the ability to
Okay.
select as an owner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we, again, had some discussions early about these. The first two, again, are, you know, owner decisions relative to film on windows. Alternate 6 was metal panels in lieu of stucco around the exterior. Alternate 8 are terrazzo floors in lieu of quartz tile in the cafeteria. The number is really out of whack. It's $450,000 for just the cafeteria. We'll be doing all the hallways for the same number. So we can't recommend taking that because the value is just not there. And alternate 9, again, was not used. Siemens controls versus open protocol. Here's an example, Michael, where this is a $200,000 add to use Siemens controls versus the $32,000 savings to use Johnson controls. So both great controls, they both do the same thing. You can remotely access any of those. You can do everything that you can do with each other. But it's a $232,000 cost difference to go with Siemens. I think the contractor is sending a message relative to their relationship, perhaps. Uponor is a alternate piping product. It's an add of $25,000. That was in lieu of copper, so it's cheaper for us to use copper on the project, so it would make no sense to accept an add of $25,000. Again, the same thing for domestic piping. One was for hydronic, one was domestic. The $5,000 to add to go with the Uponor versus copper, so we say stick with copper again. And then the last number is not to accept or reject the photovoltaic, but we need a breakout number when we fill out the ACE grant paperwork so we know what the value of this is. So the solar array on the project is a $245,000 cost to get about, I think it's 40%-ish.
Yeah, maybe just under.
Yeah, somewhere right around 40% of our power from solar, but we need that for the ACE grant. If you're not familiar, we're getting $825,000 from the state through the ACE grant to offset costs of this project.
Say that again, that number.
Around 820,000.
20.
We got the same thing for Hillcrest as well, so we were fortunate on that with district. So those are the alternates.
Look, can I just, I'm sorry,
Yes,
alternate 3 and 4, why are we saying no?
not saying no, we had some discussions about if we should or shouldn't make a recommendation for those, and at the time it was, if you want to touch base.
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a parity across the district. We do not have this in any other school at this time.
Should we have these in those schools?
I almost want to say that I've got comments on that too, but I think it's better offline.
It's better what?
Offline.
Okay.
So I'll just say one thing on that. We're working with a PCCD, for a PCCD grant, and we would like, okay.
We'll get an answer.
So is this film applied after the windows are in place, or is it part of the window structure?
It could be both.
Okay. In this case, it would be,
It would be installed before we installed the windows, but it can be installed afterwards. So if you can retrofit any building with the film.
yeah, thank you. Other questions?
So I won't go through the bid tabulations in detail, but you can see that we had some pretty sound numbers, very good competition across the board. The green are the alternates that are recommended in the base bid scenario, so all those alternates that we recommended, but not a 5 or 10 classroom addition. That's the mechanical, plumbing, and electrical for the base bid. Then we have the tabulations for the 5 classrooms, and again, this is all the alternates we recommended, plus considering the 5 classrooms, and we go through the same scenario with all of the primes, because they all have a bit of number for those alternates. And we did the same for the 10, just sharing the bid tabulations with you so you can see. And then as we go, you can see the base bid without any classrooms is around $23,809,000. Again, under budget. 5 classroom addition is $26.7 million, and that again is under the anticipated number. And the 10 classroom is $27.9 million. So the total project cost, if you go with the base bid, you're about $69,000 under the total project budget. So we'd be under budget. We still have the ACE grant. We still have contingencies, allowances that are included in this as well. And if you go with the 5 classrooms, you're about $883,000 under budget. And again, that still includes the value-added alternates, the allowances, and the contingencies. So that includes adding the 450 for Terrazzo and all those other things. You're still under budget. And the 10 classroom, you're about $3.4 million under the total budget. And again, with all of the other alternates, contingencies, and allowances. So in any case, we are under budget. We had about 27 contractors. Some of those are contractors that did mechanical, plumbing, and/or electrical, or even GC. But we had interest in those 27 categories. Value-added alternates for flexibility, programming, and growth. If you consider taking some of those classrooms, we have some contingency. You know, if the cafeteria alternate doesn't sway the numbers, and we can talk to the contractor at a later date about if you go with the Terrazzo and want to consider it, we can always see if we can afford it at the end of the job, depending on where allowances are. Incorporating energy efficient building envelope and lighting systems for energy savings. Again, very energy efficient building. LEED Gold certification. This would be your 5th building in the district that's LEED Gold certified. That's something to be very proud of. The $820,000 to offset the lead cost. Air conditioning, which was one of the main goals of this project, so you'll have your air conditioning and improved HVAC filtration. This would also have the needlepoint bipolar ionization included in the systems.
So before you continue, I want to just clarify. When you say under budget, you mean what we thought it was going to cost? Because none of this is currently approved for our budget, and we have to talk later about how we're going to finance it. So I just want to make sure that when we say budget, it's not our actual budget, it's what we thought it was going to cost.
That's correct. Yes. So we prepared this budget a few years back, and we've carried this budget through some rocky times with construction. We built some inflationary costs in, and again, I lost a lot of sleep on this budget over the years, and we're still, from the original budget a few years ago, with some increases based on the inflation and where material costs are, under the estimated cost of the project. Yes. So we have the program improvements to meet the educational specifications from the principals, teachers, and administrators, site improvements for parking, separate bus drop from parent drop-off, finally creating some separation on this site, updated life safety systems, savings realized in any one of the scenarios. There's about $1.5 million in contingencies and allowances that are also included in here. And again, if they aren't used, they're returned as well, so they would go towards the savings at the end of the job. There are savings that aren't shown, but they're real. There's about $1 million savings by vacating the buildings in lieu of putting modular classrooms there and working around kids over a 2-year project versus a 1.5 years. So we definitely see some savings. We reduced the timeline of the project from 25 to 18 months, and that's about a $280,000 savings in general conditions for the contractor. So there's some other savings that you're realizing on top of the other. Included in the overall project budget that we prepared is the money for Butler Balancing to do the testing, adjusting and balancing of the HVAC systems, which we need for the enhanced commissioning as part of this for LEED goal. The geotechnical studies to make sure our services for foundations, earth, concrete, masonry, steel, everything will be observed by our third-party contractor, not a contractor's third party. So we'll actually, it's not the fox watching the hen house. We're actually making sure we're getting what should be done. The reports come directly to us, not to a contractor. Instructional waste management is also part of the LEED process. Again, I think we were, what percentage were we on waste on the last couple?
Estimate, over 90%.
Over 90%
Yeah,
was
90% recycled.
was diverted from landfill and recycled, which is really a great number. Enhanced commissioning, which again is required.
And then the moving services, we bid out the moving services. We had 4 bidders, and Wayne Moving, who is a new contractor to the district, but did a ton of work for me down for the Philadelphia School District. He actually came in low, so we would like to proceed with moving forward with Wayne Moving. And this would be only to move from Richboro Elementary to Richboro Middle. At the end of the project, we would rebid moving everything back, because it's going to be a much smaller amount based on furniture.
And again, included in this project budget are Schrader Group's fees, but you're going to talk about I think something with Schrader Group.
Yes, so I did want to highlight, I know there was a question last week, no matter if we go with base bid 5 or 10 classrooms, the fees for both Dewey and Schrader remain exactly the same. So that they do not increase if we do the 10 classroom addition.
So the next steps, hopefully, the board agrees to move one of the options forward, and we would look for approval of these at the 16 March meeting next Thursday. We would award all of the things that we talked about tonight. The next day, we get an intent to award out to the contractors, get the agreements turned into contracts, get those out, ask for their bonds and insurance. make sure the solicitor and the insurance agent take a look at those documents, and get them as quickly as possible, because getting materials, getting submittals in, getting materials ordered and procured is key. Generators are still out over a year. Some of the HVAC equipment is 50 weeks. It's, people are talking, like 50 weeks is a year, right? 2 weeks shy of a year, but it sounds better than a year, I guess. And so they're using weeks, but it's like 99.99. It's still almost a year, so it's a lot. In July, the district would vacate. End of June, into July, vacates Richboro L. On July 5th, the contractors will take over, move in, and start renovating that building. By the end of November of '24, the building will be complete, and the district can move in starting November 1st, December 1st, sorry, should say December. Well, no, they start moving the next day, 30 November, so, and then I believe after the holiday break, we probably open. So that's the schedule. And Jess, I think you wanted to take it from here.
Yep, I'll take it.
Thank you.
So last week, thank you. Last week, we met with Cabinet, I met with Cabinet, and together, we would like to make the recommendation that we go with the 10 classroom addition. Some of the reasons are it would help reduce help start to reduce pinch points at Richboro and Holland Elementary.
Wrightstown.
What did I say?
Right.
Sorry, I'm looking at Wrightstown and said Richboro, but Wrightstown and Holland Elementary. Also, learning from the past renovations with space issues after completion. And then also maximizing our options for the future. And I do want to highlight one thing that there seems to be a theory with the district that we have empty classrooms. We don't have empty classrooms. And if we did have an empty classroom or two for a period of a day, for a period of time during the day, the impact of the overall budget you don't see. Heating and air conditioning, 1 or 2 classrooms that are perceived to be empty, they may be used for, like a high school period or two. It does not make an impact to the utility costs. So I do want to put that kind of out there. So I would like to open it up to discussion and see how everyone feels and answer any questions you may have.
Could you maybe talk a little bit more about why we need 10 classrooms? I know you went a little fast over that, and I know we talked about it last week at the board meeting, but maybe for our own sake and also the public that may be listening, they need to understand why we propose 10 or you propose 10 instead of 5. I mean, I think the 5 is a given, but the 10 is not.
I would recommend if you do the 5, you do the 10. Because based on I think the difference is only $1.5 million, something like that.
I got 1.3 million,
Yeah, so it's less than $1.5 million. So the cost is really in the utility aspect, the heating, the air conditioning.
Bob Reinhardt, before he left, he said, you have to think about not what would be nice to have, but what
Absolutely.
you absolutely need to have.
Absolutely.
And that's how would be a prudent way to spend. So I'm not arguing against, I just want to have a solid argument before we continue.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, so Jess highlighted 3 things. So if you say those 3 things again, Jess?
Help reduce pinch points at Wrightstown and Holland Elementary, learning from past renovations with space issues after they've been completed, and then maximizing options for the future.
So regarding the pinch points, we know, everybody knows in our community at this table that we have space issues at Wrightstown Elementary. We know we have similar concerns at Holland Elementary. The other thing we also know is that our special ed district classes have increased. And the additional rooms would give us some latitude in just pure space. A typical classroom that would hold 25 or 30 elementary students in a typical classroom we use that same square footage, the same size classroom for special education classes like autistic support or MDS classrooms, where the maximum allowable student number is 8 or 12 per classroom. So that, I think, is some of what we're talking about with regard to helping reduce some of the pinch point, the pinch point problems we're having, and we're continuing to work with Cropper GIS to do geocoding to be able to identify exactly where houses are, how many number of students are in those houses, what grade they're in, so that we could help get some relief to our Wrightstown families as well as the Holland families with the space in those schools. Jess's second comment was about, learning from the past. We know that at Wrightstown, that's a newly renovated school, and shortly after we completed renovation, we're having space issues up there. You all know at this table and in the community that we have committed to a STEAM special. At the elementary level, we don't have a classroom for the STEAM special at Wrightstown. We also know that we have a finite number of full-size classrooms in that building, 17. And that population at Wrightstown has increased by 2 different ways. One, by redistricting that took place some time ago, and in addition to that, new families that have moved into that area. We currently have music being instructed in half of the gym, and so this space could allow for us some latitude to give relief, and again, as Jess said, what we've learned from the past, we need more space. There are not open classrooms in the district. We do have related services such as, speech support, vision support, occupational therapy, physical therapy that are contracted services. Well, our students need a place to go to get those services. And if you look at a school like Richboro Elementary right now, a full-size classroom contains some of those folks sharing a full-size classroom. And so I think there are 2 of the points that Jess said, and then what was the third one?
Maximize options for the future.
Maximizing options for the future. I go back to what I said about we have an increased number of district special education classes in our district. And again, the maximum allowable number of students in a full-size classroom for certain classifications of special ed students is different than a regular education student. So I go back to the same example I used. An 800 square foot classroom that would typically hold 25 first graders or 36 graders, we can only house 8 to 12 of some of our low incidence population students in those rooms. So I hope that helps answer your question.
Yeah, but I mean, we talk about Wrightstown, and I totally agree. But then we're also having a plan to move students from one school to the other, because we haven't seen a recommendation with that.
Yeah, we are not prepared to give a recommendation here tonight. We will give options to the board with some of those pinch points that we've talked about with Wrightstown and Holland at the next education committee meeting. And we're not giving a recommendation or detail on that here tonight, not because we don't want to, but we're still working with Cropper, crunching some numbers and doing the geocoding. So we have some work left to do with Cropper before we sit in front of you at education committee and say, here are the numbers, here are some of the options. I would suggest that there will be options, but I won't suggest anyone's a quick fix or necessarily the perfect option. But just the same, we need to try to forward think this and forecast it, how to best serve our community and make sure kids get what they're entitled to, and that is the appropriate space so they can get the delivery of the educational programming.
This is probably reference the prep meeting that we had last week, and the word I heard you use then was flexibility. it's a case now where you don't have a lot of flexibility in terms of where you put classes. Is that true?
That's true. You know, we keep using Wrightstown and Holland Elementary as the example, and we don't have much flexibility. Back to that 25 versus 8 student. At Holland Elementary right now, we have 9 district-level special ed classes. When I was there as the principal, we had 3. So in the time that I left there till now, it's gone from 3 to 9. And most of those classrooms, most of those classes are held in a typical full-size classroom, of which at Wrightstown we have 17 total classrooms. So it does give flexibility, particularly at the elementary schedule and with our general population as well as our special education population. And again, forward-thinking it, as you work through this, and we talk at the education committee meeting with regard to the work we're doing with Cropper, we also are going to have to look ahead and see how we address, as these kids matriculate through the system and they get to the middle schools, so that we have the appropriate space at the middle schools as well.
Thank you. So Dr. Sanko, the administration's recommendation is to go forward with the 10 classroom addition.
We would recommend that, yes. I think Mr. Hickey had a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess a couple questions and then a comment. I'll ask the question first, which I think is probably going to be more directed at Doug, just because, I don't want to say anticipating questions that come from the public, but you had said that the bid for Richboro is consistent or less than what it has been for a while. When you mentioned it, you said the costs were the same or better that it has been for years or for a couple of years.
No.
I guess let me phrase it another way. Richboro, and I should know this answer, and I apologize for not. When Richboro was bid with Hillcrest, what was the cost?
The base bid cost, if you consider those alternates that we are recommending, that bid on this bid would have been about $18.5 million.
So I have the numbers right here. Base bid to base bid, March 2021, the bids came in at $19,089,000. Base bid now is $23,246,000.
Okay, so roughly $4 million more.
Yeah, which is about 17, almost 18% more.
Is it fair to say, and I know I'm asking you to hypothesize just for the public's sake, the decision was made by a previous board to not do that and to go renovate Salt Finestone at a cost. Is it fair to assume that had we done it the other way, that the cost of Salt Finestone would have risen by $4.5 million?
It was actually more expensive to build. It would have been more than that.
Okay, no, because the question that I anticipate coming in is, oh, you guys, you should have done this, you should have done that. However, had we done it the other way, the cost of Salt Finestone, which would have increased even more so.
Yes.
So I don't want to say you're saving money, but when people say, oh, we're spending an extra $4.5 million, I don't say we're really not, because to do both schools, the amount of money would have been more. So, I'm glad to hear that as far, because the other thing that I think about is when we do this, I see the mistakes that have been made, and there's nothing we can do about, mistakes that were made by previous boards. You have to live with it. However, I view this as our last crack at the apple. And if we don't add classrooms to it, like you said, not only do we run the risk of not having rooms, we constrict ourselves as to, like Dr. Sanko said, with flexibility. There's things that I'm not going to say I agree or disagree with, but different things have been thrown out that are like outside the box that could come up in years, like someone has referenced kindergarten. Someone has referenced a possible sixth grade center. Now, these are things that need tons of discussion, but if we don't do it, and then we're going to handcuff ourselves in years to come if we even want to consider this.
And you are never going to put 10 classrooms on that school for that cost ever again. It's, every year it's, outside of COVID, every year it's going to be 5% more.
The difference between 5 and 10 classrooms is so minimal, and not $1.5 million is not minimal, it's taxpayer money. But the value that you're going to get for it, or possibly get for it, you know, I heartily agree. And like you said, to give us flexibility down the road for different things that we haven't even discussed at an education committee or something else. And me personally, I don't want to be a part of a board that we keep on making the same mistakes. You know, we built, Wrightstown was built, it's overpopulated. Holland Middle School was built, it's filled to the gills, you know. So, like I said, I appreciate this. I'm glad that the numbers look good, and I'm happy for the Richborough community and the community at large, actually.
You know, just as you said, you will not find this value again, especially the difference between the 5 and the 10. If you need the 10, that's such a great number. And if you were to try to build those 5 classrooms on another building like Wrightstown, we've looked at those numbers in the past. You spend significantly more to do that than you would building them here now. So, not sure where you're headed with, you know, redistricting or spot redistricting or anything like that, but the value of this is very good.
We cannot add a Wrightstown, right? We don't have that.
That's significant cost.
That's a whole other
That would be
Yeah.
a different story.
Yeah, I didn't mean to like revisit that. I'm just saying, wherever you can do it, even if it weren't there, you're gonna spend a little more. Because you're gonna hire an architect again, you're gonna pay professional fees, you're gonna have site costs, you're gonna have the building costs. It's just, and you're gonna have another year and a half of documenting, bidding, and going through the process. You're just gonna have natural inflation on top of it.
Other questions?
Can I make
Ms.
a-
McKee?
Thanks, I just want to make a comment. I'm really supportive of the recommendation from administration. I see the value of putting those 10 classrooms on. I like the way the numbers look. I think it's good value for that money, for the flexibility it gives us. And in terms of, you know, what we've done in the past and how that should just inform us to make good decisions going forward. I mean, I toured those buildings with many of you before we went ahead with Sulphine-Stone and Hillcrest. And, you know, remember going into the mechanical room and seeing what needed to be done. So I understand when this came before us before, I think we all recognized the need to do it. It's a matter of what are you able to do at the time? And when we looked at this previously, it was the same argument. You will never get it at this price again. So I do understand too that we need to look at other things in conjunction with building in order to alleviate, as you say, you know, the pressure points. And that is another conversation. But for now, I am supportive of the 10 classrooms. I think it's money well spent, and it's the direction we need to go.
Michael?
Yeah, I just sort of to summarize some of this, we've recently renovated Wrightstown, we've recently renovated Churchville, we've recently renovated Holland Middle. And if we were to ask, and Hillcrest also, but Hillcrest, I believe, is a very similar footprint to what is being proposed right now, plus 10, correct?
Yes.
Right. So, so we've renovated those 3, and if we were to ask kids, teachers, and parents if they would have wanted more classrooms, and if they've got unused space, I think their probably answer is, yeah, we want more, and no, we don't have any unused space. So here we've got an opportunity where it costs us roughly $4 million to add the first 5, but only 1.3 to add an additional 5. The story that you touched on earlier about and you did as well, Jessica, with the base bid in March of '21 to where we're sitting right now in March of '23 of a 4 million ad, I think should not be lost. We've got a lot of expense due to supply chain issues and delays. We've got added costs for inflation, which are tremendous. You've got the general creep of buildings costing more money. And to Doug's point about the bidders, this has come back very favorable. So it would have cost us more, Mr. Hickey's point, if we would have delayed Sulphine-Stone and done Richboro instead. It would cost tremendously more, to Doug's point, if we were to add these classrooms to Wrightstown. I think that the middle school also is got some space issues. We're adding that. Hillcrest, it was added. So this is now a comparable footprint to what was done in Hillcrest.
No.
Except to Dr. Forward's point, which I agree with the flooring, which goes.
No, there were no classrooms added.
There was no classrooms.
It's the same. It's the regular, it would be minus 10.
Minus
Well,
10.
it's really-
Yeah,
there's no-
the footprint is the same minus the addition.
There we go. Okay, okay, all right. So yeah, this is set up for a very nice ad. And if we're asking the administration to consider future things, if this board is considering down the road, maybe 5 years, I don't know what it is, maybe it's less, maybe it's more, I don't know, for some of these initiatives, for us not to do this, I think brings us more under fire, where this is an opportunity to correct that, to do more space, and the value is there. So I'm also supportive of adding 10. And we've asked also, we looked at pausing this and pushing this forward, the Richboro Elementary, because we wanted to coordinate with our demographer. We wanted to look at a lot of different options. So to exclude this, but still ask this administration to bang a square peg into a round hole is, I guess, similar to asking a teacher to operate a smartboard handcuffed, right? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So I agree with some of my colleagues here and agree with the recommendation of the administration to move forward with 10. And I appreciate the work that has been done on this to keep costs consistent or minimal, considering all of these natural price increase drivers.
The other thing I'll add, just the only other thing I'll add is we've been very fortunate to ride a wave of good contractors here. In the private world, you can pick your contractors. In the public world, if they're low bid and they're bonded and insured, you're pretty much stuck with who you get. But we've had a good ride with Penn Builders, with Tri-State or Tri-County Mechanical and Borough as 3 of the 4 primes are returning that just did Hillcrest. They're very familiar with this project. They're interested in working with the district because they're treated fairly by you, the owner, and they enjoy working with Schrader Group and us. We're very fortunate to have this team back. So you're not always going to be that fortunate to have that same group returning. So it's a really favorable opportunity all the way around.
Thank you, Doug.
I have Hillcrest question. Do you want me to wait till the end?
Where we go with this?
Let's see if there's any more Richboro questions.
What was the question?
I have Hillcrest questions,
Oh.
and I was told I could ask our firm here while they're here these questions. So I'll wait till whenever you can.
Sure, good, thank you. Any other
Make
comments?
a quick comment.
Yeah.
I think when we received the email last week from the administration where these bids came in, I think you and I had talked
Yeah.
about this. It's either going to be base or 10. Get me to 10, but I don't expect to be there because for some reason I think the world's still in a different situation where the numbers are all over the place. You don't know. It's target shooting to some degree. when I opened up the bid, I was blown away that the numbers were this close. I have concerns. I think to me, this is probably easier than what we're gonna do with Wrightstown and Holland and how the district moves forward. 10 classrooms, Sam Smith said to me, after my first go to Rolling Hills, we had 3 classrooms over there. And Doug, if memory serves me right, it was about $900,000. It's kind of stuck with me. I said, this is $900,000 for 3 classrooms. And that was in 2020. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You're shaking your head.
Yeah, yeah.
It sits with me. It was like my first book, so it kind of sits with me. But I said to Sam Smith at the time, as a principal, 3 extra classrooms. Extra. What does extra mean? And I think I was quoted in education, Mary Ann, you remember?
Yeah, I do.
There's no such thing as an empty classroom. But what concerns me about some of the things and some of the past decisions, and I'm not going looking in the rearview mirror, the word flexibility, I don't know was ever mentioned. We have an opportunity here. We're price contained, which is $1.5 million of taxpayer dollars, but we are giving the administration some flexibility. I'm concerned special ed numbers. If you go back there, and it's on our website, if you go back and look at special ed numbers, we continue to see growth because we do a great job here and we take care of all of our kids. Not having flexibility, and you know what Holland looks like, and if you haven't been there, you see Mr. McClay. That program over there is large and it continues to grow. Champions is in the gym. We have what's going on at Wrightstown with everything else. By not giving this administration the flexibility at this cost, I think is a big mistake. With that being said, this is setting the table for what's coming next. The pinch point always, for me, is going to be the middle schools, and we've talked about this at length. Doug, I appreciate the work on this. The terrazzo floors has always been a little bit of a pinch point for me. I'm concerned with the underlaying that's in existence now. I think my opinion would be it's foolish not to spend $450 and fix that because those kids are up and down those hallways all day long. Not having terrazzo concerns me. We have an ability to do it at a reasonable cost. You guys are shaking your heads, yes. I think that, for me, is a bid that we have to do in addition to the 10 classrooms. So that's where I sit. I'm just blown away that the numbers came in where they did. And to Jess's point, 17.8%, I think, is the actual number increase between the original bid and where the bid sits now through COVID, through change. And, you know, some people in the community, they were expecting us to spend $50 million. Here we are.
And to build off of that, if you look at the bids, they're not all over the place anymore. They're starting to kind of level out, and you can compare. You know, you don't have one at $1 million and the next one's at $8 million. So you know that you've got A, good documents, and B, the bidders really put their pencil to paper.
And again, and I think it goes back to Doug and your team. You know, Penn Builders, these folks have been with us. They enjoy working here, and you can see when they bid, and they jump off the table because they're the bidders of choice. It's great to have those guys and girls back because we know the quality of their work. You know what the level of expectation is. Colin, you live in there the whole time it goes on. So, well, that's, you know.
Good, you're doing your job then.
I'm equally unhappy.
Well, you'll become part of the family at this point. But I think we talk about culture in Council Rock. And I think bringing our contractors and the extended family in is what built the culture in this community. And I think it's important that we have these relationships. And I'm really, really happy with this. It's a lot of money, but I think it's money well spent.
Well put, Mr. Salem. Does anybody else have any other comments before? I want to get a sense of the board as to what the administration should recommend to us. There's no other comments. Does anybody have any objection to any of the alternates that we looked at? I think there were 12 of them, minus 1, 11, whatever.
I need my questions answered before I can proceed. I'm sorry, Ed, but.
That's fine. That's fine. You want to talk about Hillcrest, we'll talk about Hillcrest.
Yeah. I've got 2 guys here from DeHuey, and to my knowledge, Hillcrest was completed 2 years ago, but it isn't finished. Can someone tell me what's left and why it's left?
Sure. So right now we're working through the final punch list, and by final punch list, it's very minimal in building at this point. It's down to about a dozen items. I know Mike, you live in the area, so you probably buy a lot. The playground did take a while. that was a delayed delivery. I know you've all recently gotten playground bids in, and I think you've all been learning about the lead times for those materials. So that's kind of where the site is. There is quite a bit of reseeding and landscaping to be done in this spring. We made a good decision here with Richboro to go to 18 months instead of 12, and that's based off of the construction climate. It's very difficult to do a project this size in 12 months, and we learned that at Hillcrest. We were under the gun at the end. We got it done. We got the kids. We got the staff there. But there was some groundings to work out throughout the school year.
How much is left? When is it going to be done?
We anticipate this summer, the punch list done, this spring we'll reseed, replant.
I'm much more concerned about inside the building and the use of walkie-talkies when we moved into the building. And those, we shouldn't have allowed that to happen. So, I mean.
Understood. We'll make sure, with this one.
I struggle with actually approving any more money for you until that's finished. I really do, because it's just dragging. It really is dragging.
Colin, that equipment that's in the parking lots, what's the deal with that?
Yeah, so they literally just finished the playground 2 weeks ago. That equipment will be getting taken out here last week, so.
Thank you.
I think the kids' first day was Friday out there, so they were out there enjoying it. New playground, mulch, new equipment. I think seen a lot of smiling faces out there.
Mr. Salmon and I walked through that same school, and we were pointed out with some of these punch list items that were missing. There was issues behind the mailboxes.
Yes.
There was issues in the bathroom right when you walk in the main door that was sort of right there with a fit and finish issue. There was some leaks in the roof toward the back looking out over the playground. Have those issues all been resolved?
The leaks, yes. We haven't had a look there in months.
Good.
You might have saw one, it's maybe a stain tile. They're waiting on shipping it 2x1 tiles. When they come in, there's a contract to replace those. I will say, I think all your comments are fair as far as getting the job done out there. Like I said, we were very under the gun to get this one in, considering the lead times for materials at the end of this job. And the contractor made every effort to get that building operational before the kids came in and avoid any delays.
We still have money contingency and
Yes.
holdbacks that we're holding up, right?
That's what I wanted to speak on. So there's a considerable amount of retainage on these contractors to make sure that these jobs get fully finished to your satisfaction. It's probably up to $500,000 for the GC alone. So, they will be coming back to finish. I discuss it with them weekly on items that come up, not only, warranty items, but you're always working out your normal HVAC problems that first year. And that's, all the reasons why we pulled that money. Not making excuses, but last year was a crazy time when it comes to procuring materials. And that all kind of led into that very sprint to the end, I guess we'll call it out there. It was certainly a challenge. And, like I said, we'll follow up with anything that's outstanding and get these guys in here.
Yeah, to Dr. Forward's point, though, we're counting on you guys to really hold their feet to the fire and get that done. And, so.
Who holds that money? You?
No.
I mean, not you, but.
The district does. I mean, we recommend to make payment. We wouldn't recommend payment until
So
we're finished.
how those invoices get processed is Colin signs off on them, and they come to my desk.
Correct.
Oh, no,
So-
when he said there was holdback money, I just wanted to make sure that we were holding the money.
That's
Yes,
correct.
we hold the contracts, so we hold the contracts for the contractors, we hold the contract for the architect, and then we hold the contract for Dewey. So that's the best way to do this, because and God forbid this happens, if Dewey fails, then the project still goes on. If one of the contractors fails, the project can still go on. If the architect fails, the project can still go on. And then there's also we get the final say on who gets paid and who does not, and where does the checks go.
Okay, no, just when he said we're holding the money,
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
No, we're as in the
Yes,
team of,
The team.
yes.
It's not my house and in my wall.
Oh, well,
Yeah, the other thing I'll add is, I mean, there were extraordinary times during the construction of Hillcrest Elementary School. I mean, across the board, across the state, across the country, finishing work. In fact, we were very fortunate. We had the electricians, we held their feet to the fire. We had temporary generators here that were here to open the building. We tested and we ran those emergency systems with temporary generators that we had the electrician pay for at Salt Limestone and at Hillcrest. So, trying to get door hardware has been Pico. We couldn't get Pico to come to our site. They were all over the country dealing with natural disasters. It was just an unprecedented time. And Mike, I totally agree. I understand your upset, but I assure you, we're doing everything we can to look after the district.
Were terrazzo floors hard to get during that time?
Uh,
Because we never talked about terrazzo floors.
So Mike, I did look that up when we were sitting here. We have the, almost to the T, the exact same alternate for that project, and it was about $460,000. And when we were looking at the bids as a group here for Hillcrest, the amount of money spent was a huge concern. And I know that the board took every action they could to make sure that these projects went forward at the least price that they could. And, there were some things that weren't added, like the terrazzo, for that reason. There was also some metal paneling that wasn't accepted, and that's the reason why we have those alternates for cost control, and the reason why they probably weren't recommended at that time.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah,
Mike?
I can go more. My concern, I guess, is with stucco. There's a huge issue with stucco in the state of Pennsylvania. There's insurance issues, there's mold issues. I want to say the M word quietly, but, right? So having that as a concern, I think it's going to take a lot of technical observation to ensure that it gets installed properly. And I'm also interested to know if all of our contractors and subcontractors are badged and backgrounded and verified, and that the contractors are controlling their workers to ensure that everybody is being efficient throughout the day. Those were, yeah.
There's about five different clearances that are required.
Okay, so when we do our first meeting, so this is where we have a pre-construction meeting where we cover all the clearances that are required. Before any contractors are on site, their clearances get submitted to the district for review, and then we do get a bundle of contractor badges, and they get handed out to each person. They have a number that's associated to their name and the driver's license number, and that's how we kind of keep control. Obviously, sometimes it becomes difficult, but you do your best to manage. When you have 100 guys on site, some guy can sneak in later in the day, but yes, every guy gets a badge, background check. If we were to find somebody that was not badged for a background check, we would then come to site until they did so. And Mike, I don't know if I finished answering your question about terrazzo procurement at the time. We actually did a project for you guys in the south, and we pushed it off a year because of the resin in the terrazzo.
It was terrazzo replacement.
That's correct, yeah, and it was a very small project, and we only did the crack repair at the time, and there was a whole hallway we were going to replace over south, and we pushed that section off a year because of couldn't get the resin.
Roman mosaic, right?
It was
They had a
Roman.
project at Westchester University that they had to leave a building with concrete floors because they couldn't get their product in time. So it was definitely a problem.
And since then, it's getting better.
My concern is not so much that there's not terrazzo at Hillcrest, is that in 8 or 9 years, we're not going to get around to replacing the tile because we're just going to ignore it. And that's where I struggle, because we just ignore problems until.
We agree.
We agree. Love terrazzo, especially if we're looking.
Well, for those of us who are on the board in 10 years, we'll remember. I think that's a really good point, Mike. I wish we had done terrazzo right now.
I just wish we would have talked about it, but that's okay.
Well, it was an alternate. I mean, I think it was in front of the board, so. Any other questions or comments on Richboro Elementary? All right, then, yeah, Ed, please.
Yeah, fine.
Yes,
Mhm.
I'm glad to hear that. We'll move forward. Thank you.
I'm sorry, excuse me, so we have to prepare agreements for the board. Did you?
The board appears to accept all of the alternates proposed.
Plus, so the 5 and the 10.
And the administration has recommended 10, so yes.
So we'll prepare agreements. I know that Tony needs those so he can get those out. So we'll prepare those and get them to you by Monday, so you have something in advance to look at before your meeting.
You guys are going to go, I mean, there was discussion of terrazzo in the cafeteria that we felt was out of whack. There was also a discussion that metal panels was exceptional, which is why you're recommending stucco. These aren't necessarily closed items.
The metal
There's
panels
not-
actually in the project, not stucco. So we would replace, the stucco would be gone. The metal panels would replace the stucco.
Okay.
Like this, again, I looked at them in Tavern Hillcrest, we have the same terrazzo alternate there.
Yeah.
The numbers were about the same, so I don't know if the numbers too is crazy, maybe it jumps out, maybe it's a big number, $500,000.
It was the decision at the time.
Yeah.
You know,
But one was to accept in the hallways, but not to accept it in the cafeteria.
Right.
That's correct.
So the number for the cafeteria is almost the same number as doing all of the hallways. So the number just feels, problematic. We can see where we are near the end when terrazzo is ready to happen. If we're doing well with numbers and, we could bring it back to the board and see if we can get a better number to do the cafeteria, knowing that we're going to do the hallways, and we can revisit it with you and see if the cap's possible later.
Good, we'll put that on our list then. I heard you say that the first time, that we could revisit it as the project goes forward and see how we are on the budget. That's a good point, Mike.
That's your task, Doug. Good luck.
Yeah.
Get those four.
I think it was going to be.
We can bring
I can't promise it'll be the same number if we ask 6 months from now, because they won't be required to honor the alternate number, but.
I get it.
We would never say yes to that number regardless.
Yeah, exactly.
So are you guys going to sit here for C, the Salt Limestone update?
I can, I live down the street, so.
All right.
You guys have me.
About 5 more minutes of stuff, so.
Item B then is the Schrader Group contract
Yep.
amendment.
So Schrader Group contract amendment is for the lead construction administration services of $41,990. Basically, the amount was included in the original proposal, but it was omitted from the PO. So it was just simply a typo of numbers, and we need to add that in.
Any objections?
Well, yeah, I mean, Doug,
That was-
haven't we always been talking, and Schrader, haven't we always been talking about doing lead?
This was on our side. It was a complete typo when we put the PO in. We didn't type the line item in, and when the number totaled, we didn't catch it.
But the numbers are they're in the budget.
They're in your side,
Yeah. And they're in their original proposal that you guys approved.
right?
It's just when we put the PO numbers, typed everything in, we left the $41,990 out. No one caught it until we got to this point and said, oh, you need to start paying for lead items, and we got to add this in.
So this isn't really an ad, it's a correction.
This is a correction for administration purposes that we just need to add in the almost $42,000.
We'll have that on the agenda for the board meeting.
All right. C is Salt Limestone Elementary issues.
Yes, it's a mechanical contract change order. It's basically over the summertime, we had to connect some existing branch lines for heat that were not picked up on as-built drawings, and as they were going through demo and making sure that everything was connected, found out these additional lines had to be connected. They did it on a T&M basis so that we could provide heat throughout the building. It comes up to be $44,740.94 that we would like to add to the contract.
So this is unlike the other one.
This is unlike this. This will increase their contract value by $44,740.
How do we get this far into a project and miss branch lines, which aren't like small things that are hiding in a corner? how do we not recognize that branch lines need to be picked up?
Yeah.
So Mike, what we did was, is it came up at the peak of our summertime. I don't know if you remember, but the summertime was when we completed all the boiler work and switched over from existing to new utilities. So with these lines where they were in some of the underground tunnels over at Salt Limestone, so they weren't jumping right out of that yet. So when we discovered them, we had to act quickly. So we initially received a proposal of about $70,000 to do the work, and I thought it was significantly high. So we asked them to go through T&M. We paid them at the time through the project allowance. We had about $80,000 in mechanical allowance, so we could expedite that work and make sure it was done and ready to go for the start of school. Since then, we were looking at our remaining allowance balances and said, hey, we used a large chunk of this. That is probably work that should be taken as a change order. So that's why we're bringing this back to you now, about a year later.
And those weren't documented or identified?
These were lines.
How old is that building?
Yeah, so these lines must have been added, throughout the several renovations and additions out at Salt Limestone. Whoever did the asphalt sometime do such a great job.
Right, okay.
Yep.
All right. Any
Well, the
objections?
contractor does the as-bills.
Right. Yeah. You're right there.
All right, any objections?
This will be the board agenda too.
All right, yeah, very good, thank you.
Who wants to leave?
You can stay with me, thanks.
Sarah, Jesse.
All right, Chancellor, Senator, something.
Yeah, Jesse's done.
You guys can go if you want. Run.
All right, thank you, Jesse. Congratulations.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, that's great. See you.
Okay, on to the Chancellor Center renovations. We've talked about this, I think 2 meetings ago. Went through and pulled out all of, I think, Mr. Solomon, you had said about, doing projects, complete projects. So went through a couple of the years to pull out everything that is proposed for this building in the next 5 years or so to put it into one complete project. So you'll see that it's repairing the water infiltration of the basement, add foundation drainage to the southern retaining wall and parking lot maintenance, repair area ways with foundation work, replace HVAC equipment and controls, interior finish repairs, which is the plaster throughout the building, add emergency generator and transfer switch. This building does not have any kind of emergency power at this time, so if the power goes out, I believe it's 0. If power goes out, we're out.
Need your phone to get out, right?
We do have emergency lighting that does come on, but that's about it. So I think all of your equipment would go down for this building, so administration would be out going to another school temporarily. Exterior painting of wood components. I believe in 4 years the building's going to be due to paint the exterior of the building. And then you'll see the management and design fees, and then the permits and contingencies, and then the total project cost. You'll see that the 2 columns is for the 24-25 fiscal year and then 25-26 fiscal year. And as we discussed, the generators and the HVAC equipment, and I think Doug kind of reiterated that there are long lead items that we do need to think about. Last time we had discussed, and forgive me, I don't remember who brought up the historic grants. Okay, I looked into them. There's not a whole lot out there.
No.
If we say we maxed out on the 2 state grants that I saw, one's a maximum of $100,000, which again is not chump change. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not a whole lot of money. And I think the other one is possibly up to $25,000 if we qualify. It says municipalities, so I'm a little leery if we qualify for it or not. Obviously, if we went in any kind of direction, we would do some more research, reach out to the grant people, for lack of I don't know what they're actually called, but the grant people to see if we could apply for that.
I appreciate you looking into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I scoured everything. I looked for anything and everything that we could for any kind of historic preservations. Both of them are with the state of Pennsylvania. The one is from PDE funding, so I'd be shocked if we didn't qualify for it. But it's not a significant amount of money. It comes out to be maximum about $125,000.
Thank you for that. That's a good idea.
Something,
Worth checking.
something's better than nothing, right?
I'll take every penny.
Questions?
I got a couple.
Mike?
First, I'm seeing an exterior painting of wood components, and then you said every 4 years.
No, that's within the next 4 years.
Okay. It costs us $250,000 to paint the exterior of this building every time we have to do it. How often do we have to do it?
I'd probably say about every 10 years.
But I think
15.
this is the second time for me, and I've only been here 8. So,
They just did it when they replaced the roof.
yeah,
Because they had to do it twice, because the first time,
yeah.
They did full exterior painting of the building?
The paint was defective, I believe.
yeah, there was
They
a
had
problem
one
with
week.
it, they come back and do it.
And anyway, that's neither here nor there. I'm just pointing out, we spent $250,000 painting this historic building. Do you know how much we spent on the Star Center when we built it? Does anybody remember? About 25. About 25. I mean, this little bit of work's costing us 1/4 of that, and it's still going to be a dysfunctional building. I make no qualms about it. I think we should be out of the historic building business, period. I don't care what this costs or doesn't cost, we shouldn't be doing it. That doesn't help kids. Maintaining historic buildings doesn't help kids. So I will be a no to any of this going forward. I really think you should consider using the land we have in Richboro or House and building yourself a facility that actually is designed for administration and maybe training, and get out of this, because these aren't going to go away ever, these bills, ever. You're not going to get a 30-year period where you don't have to do anything like you do on a regular school. So, that's, again, I can't see spending money on this. We could do better, so.
It's definitely a high maintenance building.
It's a ridiculously high maintenance building.
And this was taken off. We had 10 or 12 projects that we were looking at over a couple of year period. We pulled this off, and then you've gone back in to get better detail because we were aghast with some of the figures, right?
Yeah,
So now
because
this is-
I had the management design fees and the permit contingencies all lumped into one number.
Okay. But we're still not discussing doing this anytime in the next couple of years, right?
We need to make a decision, and I'm saying that because my maintenance guys are putting duct tape and plastic bags, figuratively speaking, on the HVAC equipment in this building.
Do you have an estimate, hypothetically, how long this would take to complete? And what is going to happen to the people in this building while it's going on?
So I'll answer your second question first and then your first question second. The idea is that once Richboro is done, we would move the people in this building over to Richboro Middle, have everybody in this building occupy there while we did renovation here. I would think this would take 6 to 8 months to do the work, roughly, because there is a lot of specialized HVAC equipment in this building. It's basically custom because of the space that we can fit it.
The township uses this building also for some of their
Correct.
board hearings as
Yes.
well, right?
Yes.
Do they contribute anything with respect to cost and maintenance?
As of right now, no, we do not charge them to use this building.
Just a correction, it wasn't 20 million, it was 14 for start. No, it looked at the numbers. Just to put that.
So that's half.
Yeah, half.
This is not a cheap building to maintain. I 100% agree that it's not cheap. I mean, if you look at that HVAC number of 2.2, almost 2.3, it's because we're going to be buying custom HVAC equipment in this building.
And they have to build it in the basement effectively because there's not an opening where you can bring this in and get it downstairs.
It's going to be sandwiched
You got to
in.
make sure it never floods down there.
That's right.
Well, and that's,
the
I mean, we have 4 rooms down there that we cannot occupy because of water infiltration.
Right, and in order to do that water infiltration, are they proposing to dig around the perimeter?
That's what you
Right.
have to do it the correct way.
Exactly, right? I know that there's some residential companies out there that say that you can do it from the inside.
Do not ever
but
do that.
Do not do that, because your concrete is still absorbing it, and you're just trapping it behind, you know.
Unless you're flipping the house.
Well, yeah.
But we don't, if we're going to fix the building, we're not flipping the building, so.
So we're proposing to dig down to the foundations
Yes.
on a historic building. How old is this building?
18 something, late
Wow.
1800s.
Right, so,
And not find anything.
and not find anything there. And then we'd have to make sure that we're stabilizing that foundation. Hopefully, we don't have to do any underpinning along the way.
Oh, there's definitely going to be stabilization work
Right,
when you're, yeah, and then you're going to be putting either a coating or a, like a rubberized material on the exterior of the foundation to stop the water, and then you're going to be putting drainage in there
and
to,
some insulation while we're at it, maybe. Yeah. And so then the parking lot gets ripped open, because you've got to have enough room to go down 8-10 feet
safely.
safely.
Mhm.
How many people in this building don't have air conditioning?
Everybody has air conditioning right now.
Okay.
Everybody has heat right now.
And how many people is that?
60, how many people are in there, 60 some?
Less, mid-50s.
50s?
But, so
it's not a big building. we're talking
So
about.
we're going to spend $7 million for 50 people.
Have we, are there any costs associated, you mentioned that all the 50, 60 people would be moved to Richboro. Are there any costs associated with making Richboro work so that
There's definitely,
during that time
there's
period?
definitely going to be costs. Richboro Middle, a lot of the HVAC equipment is at its end of useful life, so there's definitely, there's going to be a cost. I mean, you'll see it on the maintenance side more than anything, but if you decide, say you decide to keep Richboro Middle, the first thing I would say is we need a new chiller over there.
Right.
That the whole air conditioning system needs to be fixed or upgraded.
And then the board and the township's board still needs to have meetings during these 6 months. There's 6 meetings. Where would
We
that?
use the auditorium.
Use the auditorium.
We already checked that out.
You know,
The other,
Middle school.
I'm
There
sorry,
there would also be associated costs, just like moving the middle school. We would have to get things moved out of here, and moved back in. Yeah.
and the other use for this building is for training, for professional development, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Is it adequate for that?
We could use more space.
And there's not enough parking for professional development, right? When you have,
That's the biggest problem.
Correct, yeah.
yeah.
But are those problems solved when you're at Richboro Middle? Parking,
Sure.
training space?
Parking, training, we have full-size classrooms over there. We have a much larger parking lot.
But I do want to, Richboro Middle is not the saving grace.
Yeah.
You're going to have to put money into it if you're going
I
to
would
keep it.
suggest knocking it down and building the right side.
Right.
Not renovating that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have we looked into selling this building, how much money we're going to get?
We did, but if, that was a long time ago. So if the board is interested in revisiting it, the possibility of selling it, I think we ought to discuss that.
We get an appraisal done, I don't know how many years ago, and this building was part of an appraisal that we had done.
Do you remember how much it was?
I would have to check
I
with
would,
the building's office.
I would just, even if this building was worth zero, we're looking at more than $14 million in turnover, of course, so, it's almost worth locking the door with the keys inside. I'm not saying that, but the maintenance costs in this are extreme.
Yeah, but at the same time, it is a historical building.
I'm sure someone would want to occupy it.
We as a community, we have to come up with a solution.
But-
On the other hand,
Okay, maybe it's not.
every company has headquarters. So, and that's where the CEO and the administration is. And those are usually the nicest spaces. So because they're not selling from there, doesn't mean that it's not something that needs to be done. This is a lot of money, I totally agree. So, but we have to figure out what are our options, right? What kind of alternatives we have, and then we come up with.
I would say, I agree with you. There was, even as early as a year ago, when I would say something like getting out of this building, people lost their minds. I mean, they just, but now you're hit with the cold hard numbers and we can't knock this building down and build a new one right here. We are not allowed. But I'm saying we shouldn't be preserving historical buildings on the taxpayer's dime. That's what I'm saying. I don't think we should be preserving historical buildings on the taxpayer's dime.
Maybe we should speak with the township and see if we together come up with ideas, just to brainstorm and see, because it is a historic building, it has.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
There is a, Marianne knows, there
Yeah,
is
I
a
used to-
body, there's a
yeah.
sitting body.
Yeah, I used to serve in the borough, and I was just mentioning, much of the borough is on the National Historic Register, so you are very limited in what you can do to those buildings. But I would suggest that we coordinate with the Joint Historic Commission in Newtown Borough, and there's an affiliate with the township too, I mean, for what it's worth. Because we
Yeah,
are.
if they'd like to pay for it, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, again, that's my
Nice.
thinking is and I take your point, this is our community's money, I take your point. Obviously, I have a real soft spot for this building and for preservation in general, but not when I'm using other people's money to do it. But this building is significant for a number of reasons in terms of community and the district. And what will happen to this building is of great concern to me. Because as you're saying, Mrs. Pally, what are our options here? What could the building sell for? It's a very specific building. We're seeing the costs involved in this building. This certainly doesn't make it attractive for any investor to buy this building. And yet, by the same token, I know firsthand from living in an historic community, people see themselves as stewards of history when they make a purchase of a building or a home here. So I'm not quite sure what the answer is, but obviously we need to decide soon what to do to keep a healthy workspace for people.
I think that's well put. I mean, obviously, we can't walk away from this building. We have to, there's a whole lot of, the appraisal seems to me was in the range of $70,000, the cost of doing it. It was not insignificant.
There were multiple buildings appraised at that time.
That's right.
I believe at that time, I'm going off of memory here, I believe at that time, Richboro Middle School was part of the appraisal. The property at Twiningford Road was part of the appraisal, and this building was part of the appraisal.
Dr. Senko, the old Nike base is what
Yes.
you're talking about. Is it
The Nike Air Base.
That's all I ever knew it to be, the old Nike
That's
base.
missiles, not sneakers.
That's maintenance out there now?
We have our maintenance department out there. We also have third-party vendor. We have ABM out there in one of the buildings.
Because that did serve as administration years ago.
That was the administration in 1980s and early 90s.
Can I?
Yes.
Jess, you can wave me off if it's an unfair question, but what is your opinion of spending money to continue this building? Or does it make a lot of sense to have the hard look at an opportunity elsewhere?
So I will say, I absolutely do love this building, but to your point, I don't know that the school district should be in the business of maintaining historic buildings. When I first interviewed here, I think you were there.
I was.
I was kind of in awe with this room, coming in and you see the two presidents hanging here, and you've got the old chalkboards with all the woodwork. It is an amazing building. The district has clearly valued this building over the over 100 years now. now working here, it does not fit our needs right now. And I don't want to speak out of turn in any way, but I know there's some people that are not comfortable in the space that they are in. There's one person in particular that I would love her office to be 3 times the size of it. I have not been here through a summertime, but I do hear that there are certain areas that get rather uncomfortable. I do see the calls that, certain HVAC equipment's not heating properly, and we gotta call someone in to come up in the attic and reset equipment. I do know that we've put in extra heat places because, for instance, payroll was freezing, so we put in some extra heat, some electric heat in that area. And that's just what I've learned in the 4 months that I've been here. But I do say I do love this building. On the historic side, just kind of personally, but yeah, it's going to be a lot of money. And, I tell you now that it's, almost $6.4 million. And then kind of to your point, we open up the ground and we find some issues, or we start fixing plaster and we find some issues,
Where does it go from here? Once you open it up, everything else will.
And I think it's anybody that owns a house that's more than 20 years old.
Yeah.
You renovate your kitchen and you
Yeah.
open up a wall and
Surprise.
yeah.
I know it's not the same, but the October 22nd insurance appraisal valued the building at $13,210,000.
Interesting.
And I will say that I don't remember what this building is zoned for, so that might be a deterrent.
It's commercial.
Yeah,
So
so
you're okay.
that's a little, I mean, if someone wanted to come in here and change it to housing,
I don't know if that would work.
I don't know that that would work. So you're kind of limited on your audience. But this, if you ask, I know you didn't ask, but I'm going to say that this project makes me nervous. I would ask for a healthy contingency on the project.
Would you tell this in the museum? I mean, it is a beautiful building, it has a lot of history.
Not on taxpayer dollars.
Not us,
Yeah.
but maybe
Someone
the
else.
borough or the township, or even Bucks County would consider that. I don't know.
So I know timing is, I'm sorry, Mr. T, go ahead.
No, please.
I know timing's of the issue, but I like the suggestion of us getting together with the Historical Society and maybe simultaneously go, Tony, look at what it would cost to have an appraisal done of the building. So we could brainstorm ideas, we can come back with some real numbers, real-time numbers for an appraisal, and maybe some ideas and partnerships that we don't know exist yet.
And I would also ask, when you do that, come up with an alternative to this building and approximate cost. I'm not asking you to do anything, but, I mean, what would it take to build on the house track for 24, or knock down Richboro and put it doesn't have to be that footprint. There's only 50-something people in.
So,
Just
okay, just briefly, because quick kind of brainstorming conversation. Richboro Middle does have the auditorium, they do have the gym, and the gym is rented out heavily. Would you, in your administration building, ideally have a gym and an auditorium, or, is that something that we want to exclude?
I would ask this guy what he needs for training.
Fair enough.
Again, we can't use taxpayer dollars to build community centers like a gym. We can't. It's not, we're here to educate kids.
Absolutely.
So, but I would defer to Andy about, if he needs an auditorium for training.
Or board meetings?
Or whatever, yeah.
But it's already existing, I mean, yeah.
Well, that's.
Let's kind of do a three-pronged approach here. Let's take that idea to cabinet and put it in front of the people that are overseeing the schools every day, and, what the needs are in each department that function in this building. That would be the first prong. The second prong, follow up with what Ms. McKee said and get out in touch with our neighbors and friends right here in the borough to see if we can come up with any ideas and partnerships. And then the third thing, work with Tony and really drag Bob Reinhardt back into this, because he's the one that had the appraisal done last time, and then,
One more meeting, Bob.
and then we'd be able to come back here with some ideas and,
That's what I see.
yeah.
That's a great solution. Thank you, Dr. Sanqua. I was worried about the time this evening, and I think this is a good solution. Thank you. So I guess we put this to rest for now, Jess?
Yep, we'll
All right.
continue working forward. I got one more slide and then I'm done.
Please, go
Okay.
ahead.
Wrong way. Okay, upcoming agenda items. Results from the district playground renovation design services RFP. They've been sent out to 9 design firms. Proposals are due on Tuesday, March 28th. I think it's Tuesday next week. We have a pre-proposal meeting to review. And we have gotten a tremendous amount of interest. My leg is cramping. Tremendous amount of interest from the design firms that we've sent it out to. Next is the use of school facilities, just to kind of go over what our cost pricing is now for outside groups, make sure that we're in line with where we would like to be. And then also our license agreements with both Patriot and Carusa for North and South turf fields. And then lastly, the summer 2023 CIP bids will be in the beginning of April, so I'll be bringing those bids to you guys for review and possible approval.
I have 2 quick
Questions?
questions.
Yeah, please.
2 quick ones. Number 1, which should have occurred earlier, is in the spec for our renovated buildings, are we spec'ing digital clocks or analog clocks?
I'm going to guess digital, but I'll get back to you.
Guessing it's digital, because I've heard from several different constituents and their teachers that some kids are having a hard time learning how to tell time, and every time they look up, it's always a digital clock. So it makes it very difficult for them to get an analog clock. I see analog clocks in our old buildings that haven't been renovated, but at all the new ones, apparently they're digital. So it's probably a light lift to maybe add some analog clocks in some classrooms that could be co-witnessed perhaps with the digital. I don't know, however you guys see fit. Maybe it's an educational issue. The other thing is with respect to our use of facilities, CRBA is not listed there. I don't know if that falls under the use of facilities that many other organizations, and they're one of many that use our gyms, for example.
This is different.
This is
an
different.
exclusive contract.
Right, right,
The CRBA will rent accordingly,
right.
so they'll get gyms accordingly.
Right, and so with that, they currently don't have the ability to connect into our scoreboards. I don't know if I think certainly the middle schools, the scoreboards work. I don't know if they don't work in some of the old ones like Richboro Middle, for example.
Yeah, we had that discussion before about scoreboards, because I used to work with Upper Mayfield basketball.
Yeah.
And we decided not to allow the gym renters, correct me if I'm wrong, but we decided not to allow the gym renters to use our scoreboards.
Why not?
Because of concern of,
Because of the cost of the digital system and overseeing it, having to lock it and unlock it.
If you don't have someone there monitoring the system when someone else is using it,
Yeah,
it gets broken and then has to be repaired.
right, but aren't we just connecting something into it to be able to use it? Or you're saying we have a specific board that comes out?
And that something is a specific board that
Right.
plugs into the,
So some of them may be interested in, if they break it, don't we have a contract if they break the floor, if they break a door, that they have to pay for it? Or would it be?
There may be 55-week lead time to replace.
It might be, right.
That's the problem.
Okay.
That's the problem, because we actually have to keep score for PIAA games.
Yeah,
And if it's broken, we can't.
we can't do it.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that some of this might be interesting for them. I know CRBA has grown tremendously, and they may be interested to see how they can help and how they can facilitate something. It might be worth, as far as we're revising contracts and looking at that, a reach out to them and or others to figure out if there's something. But I certainly agree, if there's only one scoreboard, it's proprietary, that we the lead time for a replacement's 52 weeks. I mean, these are hypothetical, but if we could get some actuals for that, put that up, that might be a way to do it.
I mean, even if it's 3 or 4 weeks, I mean, if you're in basketball season, basketball, wrestling, boys and girls basketball,
Right.
it could impact, you get into playoffs and,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking worst case scenario.
Sure. But I mean, a lot of our students that go to our schools are also involved in CRBA. And a lot of the parents are paying taxes and putting their kids through this school. So figuring out a way when they use the facilities to currently right now, the bleachers go one way or everybody's sitting in one spot and then they have the table in front with the score painting or facing a blank wall that nobody's got to look at. So it's entertaining to watch people get up throughout the event and go try to look at the score and text and tell their friends and that sort of thing. So it would be interesting if we could figure out something that works for everybody. The clocks, it's a light lift though, right?
Let's see why not. I'll look into it and get back to you and let you know.
All right, thanks.
I mean, even if we get, a dozen clocks from Walmart.
Right.
I mean, that shouldn't be an issue.
Right.
Thank you. Other questions? Are we done with Jess for tonight? Thanks a million.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks, Jess.
All yours.
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet?
Do we want to?
No, it's-
There we go, just like that. Finance.
Well, I'd like to start off by saying, in contrast to Bob, this is not my last meeting. So the first item on our agenda, I think everyone knows, or most of you know Kevin from Cornerstone. He's going to present on our results with our investments for the third
December, through December 31st. So
Through December
first half of
31st.
the fiscal year. I'm not sure. I know those numbers get pretty small up there, so there's some hard copies here. And I will be probably the only one you'll hear from in a long time who is happy to report that we are way over budget. Because we're talking about it. So just quickly, I'm going to jump ahead to give just a brief background, and we had a discussion and it reminded me that we don't often kind of take this back to the subs in terms of what it is we're doing here and where the assets come from and what the goals are. And if you look here, you can see it says asset location. That means two different things. One is who the depository is, but it also means, I'm on page 7, but it also means, are they general operating funds? Are they capital reserves? Are they bond issues that haven't been spent yet? Or, at the bottom, where you can see the cafeteria account, scholarship account, all that good stuff. And the source of these funds, when you look at the top, I don't know if I can, when you look at the top, you see total general funds. Those are tax revenues and balances. So basically the district safety net, the savings account that you would dip into if you need to. And these fluctuate pretty significantly over the year. Tax revenue comes in over the summer and then gets spent down. But these dollars, this 206, and you can see just in a 90-day period, 206 turns into 185 million because you have payroll, you have all the expenses we talked about here. But during that time, we have the ability to invest these assets and earn income. And Pennsylvania state law is fairly restricted as to what we're allowed to invest in. And as a reminder, everything is backed by the full faith and credit of the federal government. I won't make any jokes about the fact that we hit our debt ceiling and we're gonna, the federal government's not holding anything credit, they really are trying our patience right now. But then, you know, in the political bucket here, these are, you know, what you can see, you know, whether they're general obligation bonds or escrow accounts for the different projects. For a long time, with interest rates near zero, you didn't really have to worry about any kind of issues. You know, the federal government does have some rules that the district can't issue bonds and then make more income than they're paying on. That is something that, you know, as Tony and I and our teams will be getting together soon to talk about some of those rebating and arbitrage rules. But along the way, you know, the district is making some money there. And if you look at bottom line, last year when we talked about the budget, we said, you know, why don't we keep the level of interest rates was really uncertain. We knew they were going to go up. We didn't know how much they were going to go up. So we had said, for safe, you know, to be safe, let's budget $1 million. But it was potentially, you know, we kind of looked out and said, we might be able to make upwards of $3 million. And as we sit here today, or this, I'm sorry, this is 12/31, but halfway through the fiscal year, we're right at about $1.5 million. And we'll talk in just a second about the interest rate environment, but I think for next year's budget, now that number is probably going to be in the $4 to $5 million range, and that would be relatively conservative again. And just to give you an idea, 2 years ago, we were scraping and clawing to get to 350,000. That's how quickly interest rates have moved up. And, you know, our ability to capture a lot of that boom is why you see the higher income payments here. So I'm going to back up just a second and, you know, I mentioned how quickly interest rates move up. This dark blue line, and in the future, we'll change up these colors so it's easier to read, but the lowest line here is looking at the treasury yield curve, so from 1 month all the way up to 30 years. But this is as of just a year. And we were earning virtually nothing here. But with inflation and with the Federal Reserve pushing up interest rates, you know, here's where we were at the end or at the beginning of the fiscal year. And this is where we were saying, you know, maybe 2 million, maybe 3 million. You know, you look at 2.5 to 2.8, but as of the end of 2022, look at how significant that jump was in interest rates. And to put it in perspective, the Federal Reserve raising interest rates 7 times a year does not happen often. And our expectation is we're going to see another 1 or 2 interest rate increases just in the next couple months, and potentially up to, you know, I'm being recorded, and so I'm going to say it and I'm going to own it, potentially up to 6% or 6.25% on overnight rates. Because, you know, we're in one of those good news is bad news type environments where you would think that unemployment being incredibly low is a good thing. The Fed is looking at it and saying the labor market is so tight, it's creating more inflation. And as counterintuitive as it seems, they're committed to raising rates until they can get the unemployment number higher. And so to try to loosen that market. So our thinking is that we will be able to carry and ride this wave as the Fed continues to raise. But one of the things we'll have to do, and I think on this page you can see, this goes back to 2016. You can see the 6-month Treasury bill moving up, and then you had COVID where they cut rates to 0. And then I think in retrospect, the Federal Reserve might say we left rates at zero for too long. Then you just see it shoot to the moon. And again, this all happened within the last year. So the majority of assets the school district have benefited, have gotten higher and higher interest rates as the Federal Reserve raised rates. But at some point, we are going to want to lock in a little bit longer term rates because, one of the things we know from history is that the Federal Reserve overshoots, right? They'll raise rates and then they'll push the economy into a recession. At that point, rates come down. So there is nothing to talk about today in terms of game plan, but it is something we'll be talking about on how to most effectively structure the portfolio in order to, maximize the income for the district, knowing that, our main goal is to make sure we have the liquidity when we need it, and that we're never talking about having any permanent capital losses. This just shows where the market thinks interest rates will be in June. And basically what it's showing you is at least 2 to maybe 3 more interest rate raises. We talked about this slide already. It's a really busy slide with transfers and expenses and withdrawals, but our team tracks this on a regular basis, and it isn't an accounting that comes from the business administration office, but it does help us plan when we look back over time at the timing of cash flows to try to be able to lock in interest rates at the optimal level. Here, what you're looking at are each of these 5 are different depositories that the board has approved, and they all have a little bit of some differences in them. But I'm going to point out one number just because it jumps off the page at us is the Wilmington Trust portfolio. So if you think that you can make a plated and TD, any First National Bank in town, even Stonecastle, as checking and/or savings accounts to make deposit. Wilmington Trust portfolio is the district actually owns the individual bonds out a year or 2. I'll show you that. So the district actually owns about $5 million worth of bonds that mature this year and $5 million that mature next year. Well, as interest rates go up, the price of bonds comes down. So this loss I'm showing here is really just a mark-to-market loss. We're going to get par back when these mature. And quite frankly, the Wilmington Trust portfolio back in the really low interest rate days was the only thing creating any income for the district. So when you look here, you can see, so this is what we on for. These are what the individual bonds are working now, and here's the include income. But this market value is going to grow to meet the cost. All of these bonds are going to mature in the next couple of years at face value. So you have no concerns on that front. And then just quickly, TD Bank, which is your main depository and where a majority of your checking and spending accounts are coming to and from, is backed by the Federal Home Loan Bank letter of credit. Pliget is a commingled trust that basically many different public municipalities around the state put their money together and they manage it within a trust. So, the long and short of it is the news is really good in terms of compared to Target. I think the news is really good. We have a bright outlook to be able to drive revenue for the district. But part of that is going to also be that there could be some economic pain outside of this
as the Fed continues to raise rates to slow the economy. But, from our perspective, in this particular account, our job is to drive that revenue in a safe, the income in a safe manner. And really hope that the Fed can manage a soft landing like they are saying they're hopeful of. We're just not as sanguine as. So with that, I will ask if there are any thoughts or questions.
So I heard this presentation before, so I just want to just highlight a couple of things that is going to stay with me. So it's easier for me to think about it. It's like when you have your salary, okay, it comes in every month, or so same here, the revenue comes in from primary tax at different times, and then, instead of going to the bank in the savings account, we are smarter, so we have these instruments that we can deposit, so we earn more income than the bank would give us, and at the same time, we're protected. So it's always it's a play, how much can we get, and being safe, and at the same time, stay within our parameters. We don't overextend ourselves. And so with the Wilmington Trust, the loss is just a paper loss. It's because we're not gonna try to liquidate anything at this point, because these are bonds that will mature in the future, and by that time, we're not gonna really have a loss.
Right. If I can interrupt or interject right there. For example, this has a coupon of 0.125% right now. We'll mature it May at par, and we'll be able to reinvest that at 5.5% coupon. So I'm sorry if that was.
No,
I
thank you.
forgot to make that. So,
It helps to hear that the second.
I've got a quick question. You mentioned, and you've got a slide here that says effective March 24th. Well, this is 2020, so this is backdating here. TD has replaced the asset-backed securities historically used as collateral with a letter of credit backed. Am I right to be concerned by that?
No. So, and that slide is just been there ever since that letter has come in. No, so part of the concern was that, so at TD, we have $250,000 of FDIC coverage. State law requires anything above that to be securitized, to have excess security. One of the weaknesses of the law is that the security doesn't have to be that good. So when we were hired and we looked at it, we said, what is backing our money? And the answer was what's called asset-backed securities tied to credit card and auto loans. And while they were AAA rated, we said, without giving up any income, we could get the letter of credit from the Federal Home Loan Bank that if something happened to TD, they would come in and make the district whole. And part of the thinking there was and TD Bank is a very strong bank. If something bad happened to TD and put our money at risk, I'm pretty sure auto loans and credit card loans wouldn't be doing very well either.
Well, didn't we have a similar thought in 2008 when a lot of it was going toward home mortgages? Which
We weren't doing this then.
We weren't doing this. No, I understand. I'm making a parallel between the thoughts of this country and the robustness of home mortgages, and as we are comparing this with the robustness of credit cards and car loans, making an assumption that everything's going to be okay. And in 2008, I understand we as a district weren't doing it, but I'm drawing a parallel to what happened in the nation. It all popped.
Right, and that's why we said the credit card and auto loans are not good collateral.
Okay. So then what So right now, we've switched it to a note based upon the Bank of Pittsburgh.
No, so the federal home loan banking system is, there's one in Atlanta, one in Pittsburgh, and many different places, in a dozen places, I believe. Those are all backed by the federal government. So if the, so again, those, and we're talking about the 3 to 5 standard deviation event. If we didn't get our money out of there, then, I'm not getting money out of my federal farm credit bureau. Whereas, the credit cards and one of the concerns we had with credit card and auto wasn't even economic, it was liquidity. If the market got rocked, we put on a bunch of asset-backed securities that would pay us a little bit every month. Here we would get a check, I'm not sure where, TD wasn't around, but we would have to figure out where to send it. So, like that security without having to give up. One of the original conversations we had with the board at the time was, we'll have to go back and negotiate with TD because they were making 4 to 5% on those assets, paying us 1%. But we negotiated with them, said we don't care. Like, you made a lot of money off the district already, and you still will. Give us the same right with higher security. They weren't happy to, but they did.
So in summary, that letter says that those investments are backed by the federal government.
Right. So this 113 fluctuates at TD, they will increase or decrease the amount on the letter that is, and the letter is made to the benefit of the district.
As long as TD is okay.
No, well.
Or if TD fails, that's the backup.
Right, if TD is fine, that just is a piece of paper. If TD fails, that's where you need the letter. And again, if TD failed, is a really important point. If TD fails, there are going to be a myriad of problems everywhere. But the one thing we'll know is there will be a check in the mail on air quoting. But we have the security we need if that happens.
Other questions? I think that point that Kevin just made about all those bonds maturing that are currently paying, those coupons that are paying those really low rates are going to be maturing, and then we'll be able to go out and get much better rates. So that's really a positive on the horizon. It's just, how far out is that?
Here, that's 2023 and 2024.
Yeah, so within the next year and a half.
They will all have been able to be reinvested at higher rates.
Other questions for Kevin? All right, thank you, Kevin.
All right,
Appreciate it very much.
I will just close with wishing our wrestlers good luck out in Hershey.
Yeah.
It's a guy who came behind the state shape and was followed by a second mistakes. I consider my lackluster career keeping the fans wanting more.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Next is PFM update, Zach Willard.
Actually, Garrett Moore. Zach had a family issue he needed to work out, a little ER visit this afternoon, so I'm subbing in.
Hope it's turning out all right.
Yeah,
Thanks,
no, it is.
Kevin.
Texting and everything's fine. So
Thanks, Kevin.
I know there's some new phases. some new faces in the room. My name is Garrett Moore with PFM Financial Advisors. Just a little bit of background on us. We've been operating as the district's fiduciary and financial advisor for the past myriad of years. Again, we are a fiduciary. We are not a bank. We don't have money ourselves to loan. Rather, our job is to get you all the lowest cost of capital and get you guys the best financing packages based off of your needs. If you'll permit me, the slide I'm sure is going to be some small font, so I do have handouts as well. Folks want to take some and pass them around, so I'm squinting. Say again? We don't. Even better. So just while the packets are being handed out, so again, this is an update to the financing plan that really started. Well, the first financing kicked off in early 2021, but the planning for this kind of phase of the capital plan dates back to 2019 or 2020. So again, we're reaching kind of the end, if you will, of the broader financing plan. It's changed a little bit over the years based off of projects changing, based off of interest rates, things of that nature. But again, tonight is really just an update for you all on where we're at now and kind of where we're looking to go here in really the next year or so. Again, Kevin did a good job with his charts, but I have a few of mine. So page 2, again, there's 3 charts. I'm really just going to focus on the first and a little bit on the second. So as Kevin mentioned, Fed has been increasing rates at a very steady pace. That has affected the short end of what's known as the yield curve. And a traditional yield curve is what the red line is really meant to indicate. And that really just shows that borrowing rates in a normal environment for a 1-year loan should be less than for a 30-year loan. Just think home mortgages. You get a lower rate on a 20-year mortgage as you do a 30-year mortgage. We're not in that environment right now. And frankly, we're in a very odd environment in the sense that the 1-year interest rate is actually higher than even the 10-year interest rate. That is unique, but it also presents a little bit of opportunities. One, because you're able to reinvest and earn on your fund balances. But if you just look at the blue line, which is the current yield curve, you'll note that that yield curve is very flat. What I mean by that is there's no additional interest rate cost, if you will, between borrowing for 1 year or borrowing for 30 years. So now is a good opportunity, relatively speaking, to lock in longer term financings because you don't really have that penalty associated with the longer financing. Again, interest rates are higher than where they were on the 2021 and 2022 financings. But just to give you a little bit of statistics, if you will, if you're looking at this bottom left colorful box in the middle chart, that blue line is really just meant to show that, looking at the 10-year MMD curve, or 10-year MMD, which is a barometer, if you will, for the 10-year treasury, but only in the municipal market, 65% of the time, rates have been higher than they are today. So while we're no longer in the absolutely low interest rate environment that we were in 21 and 22, we're still historically speaking at very attractive rates. I should also note, as I'm going through this, folks have any questions, interrupt. So that's just a little high-level summary of kind of what the interest rate market looks like at this time on kind of the borrowing side, if you will. Flipping to page 3, this is the district's current outstanding debt. It's broken into the top half and the bottom half. The top half represents the gross debt service that the district is responsible for. The bottom half is what's known as the district's local effort, which takes into account the state aid or the state reimbursement that the state gives you on projects. So again, the top half is gross, bottom half is net. I'd be remiss if I don't also add, again, apologies for the small print, down at the very bottom, there's a line that's labeled call date. All the district's bonds, or at least the vast majority of them throughout the years, have been issued with call dates, which is the date, the earliest date in which any of these bonds could be refinanced for savings. So think refinancing your mortgage, just going from a higher rate to a lower rate. Those dates, each individual bond has a date in which you would be eligible to do that. The only reason I pointed out is because there are a few call dates coming up in the next 2 to 3 years. The 2016 A bonds is your next callable bond, which is in May 2024. And then after that, you have several in the 2026 and 2027 calendar years. That's not to say that when we get to those dates that a refinancing would make sense. It's all dependent on interest rates. But again, it's the earliest opportunity in which we could refinance. And again, when we get closer to that time period, we as your financial advisor will be in contact with the business office and administration, giving them a heads up as far as does it make sense or does it not make sense, and if it does make sense, what kind of numbers are we looking at? And again, the district has refinanced their bonds several times over the years.
But that was in a sinking rate environment, not a rising rate environment.
Correct, correct. But again, 2024, 2026, 2027, my crystal ball has never worked. So again, not saying it's going to be eligible to refinance or that it would make economic sense, but they're out there. There's things that I kind of hope for and feel cross for, but again, would be remiss not to mention it. Page 4 is really the money page. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about this. So working from left to right. So again, as I mentioned, this portion of the district's capital plan kind of kicked off in 2020 and 2021 with your first issuance. Columns 8 and 9 was the district's debt service at that time. So it was the debt service back in 2020 and 2021. Since then, the district has issued 2 refinancing bonds, the series of A of 2021, and then the 2022 refunding, which are in columns 1 and 3 respectively. In total, those refinancings generated approximately a little over $1 million of savings for the district. So that was a good thing. Columns 2 and 4 were the new money financings that the district undertook, and those, in the case of the 2021 B bonds, those were to finance a portion of the Hillcrest Elementary School as well as the turf field. And then in 2022, that bond issue was used to finance Soul Finestone, Hillcrest, some of the capital improvement projects, and some of the MVIT projects. So that brings you then to column 14, which is basically the debt service as of today. So it takes into account your existing debt service in column 9, adds in the new money borrowings that the district has already done, and subtracts out the refinancing savings. So column 14 is where we are today. Everything on the right-hand side of the page, so in the blue and red, those are kind of the new future financings that we're looking to do in order to round out, again, this phase of the capital plan. So 2023, which is what we're looking for approvals for over the next couple meetings, would be for approximately $23 million. And that would round out the financing of Hillcrest. It would continue to finance Soul Finestone, and it would be the first borrowing associated with the Richboro Elementary School project that we just discussed. One note, and it goes back to the comment I made about the flat yield curve. Over the past several months, in consultation with your business office, the decision was made to, because of the flat interest rate environment, go out further. What I mean by that is if you look in column 11 and 13, you'll see that those financings for new money were limited to about 20-year or 25-year terms. With these set of financings, so the 2023 proposed financing and 24 financing, we're looking to go out 30 years. Reason being, there's no real penalty to do it in the current interest rate environment. And 2, it provides additional room in the future so that if you do have additional capital projects coming on that aren't listed or contemplated at this time, it gives us more room to layer on that debt while not impacting or not having as great of an impact on upfront budget. So again, I know in the past, I think Newtown was discussed or thrown around the possibility of doing a project there. Again, understandably, no decisions are contemplated or made. But again, having that in the back of our mind, we wanted to put the district in the best position that if it did come back online, or any other projects for that matter, there was room in your broader quote-unquote debt portfolio to layer that on with, again, limited impact to your budget. Speaking of your budget, columns 18 and 19 are really a testament to the district and past business offices. So currently, the district has budgeted in its debt service line item in its budget, round numbers 18.76 million, and it's kept that for the past several years. So barring fiscal year 23 and 24, if you're looking in column 18, all these projects that are listed here are not going to have not and will not have any impact to the taxpayers from a millage perspective. So you're really able to do all of these projects without really raising your debt service line item in your budget. So again, testament to the planning of the business office over the years and the diligence that you all have had to keep rates where they are, or tax rates where they are. Any questions before I get into kind of the timeline and moving forward? Okay. So page 5 is the timeline specifically for the 2023 financing. I will note that this timeline was put together a few days ago. Over the past couple days, 2 or 3 days, there's been some delays in the timeline just because of timing and trying to coordinate specifically the credit rating call. It's not a big deal. It just will slide this timeline back maybe a week or so. And again, we want to make sure that we're in the best possible place for the credit rating, so the delay is definitely warranted. Again, we're here tonight to discuss with you all the current plan, and if everything is in order and everything sounds good to you all, we would be asking for an informal authorization to proceed, which would just allow PFM to begin working and prepping all the legal documents in consultation with King Spry, your bond counsel, and your solicitor, to get the ball rolling so that we would be in a position to lock in rates in the springtime. So what it would look like going forward, should you all give us the authorization to proceed tonight, is, I believe, at your March 16th meeting, there would be a what's known as a maximum parameters resolution in front of you for your consideration. That document can sometimes be confusing to folks. I mentioned that we would be looking to lock in $23 million with this financing. The parameters schedule that you will see at your next meeting will be for a number higher than that. The rule of thumb of the parameters schedule, the informal rule of thumb, is to take whatever you're going to borrow and add 20% to it. So the parameters resolution that you're going to see next week, and what's also provided on page 7, is going to be for $27.5 million. Now, that's just a product of the state and what's required by the state in order to file. What it does, by giving us that extra 20% of room, it provides us the flexibility that, depending on where the rates come in at, whether we get premium bonds or discount bonds, we can move the principal amounts for each individual maturity around to fit into the broader financing plan. So again, it's really just a resolution that provides us with the maximum flexibility. 10, 15 years ago, parameters resolutions weren't overly common, but in recent years, specifically, past 5+ years, most of our issuers are doing that. What it allows us to do is it allows us to enter the market at the most opportune time, as opposed to us having to price the bonds when you all have a meeting that night. So again, 10 years ago, if you guys had a meeting next Thursday, that's when we would have to sell bonds, regardless of what the market looked like. This parameters resolution and the fluff that's in it allows us to go out to the market at the most opportune time. So again, you're going to see a resolution that has a $27.5 million number. Note that we will not be borrowing $27.5 million. It just gives us the flexibility to structure the bonds the way they need to be. And final approval will be the day of pricing from the business office.
Questions at the very end?
Yeah.
Yes, please. I see in March, the S&P credit rating is due to us. Do you anticipate any change in our credit rating?
No, I don't. So currently, the district is rated by Standard & Poor's, and your current rating is a AA. To give you some perspective, that is the third highest credit rating you can have, period. The notch above that would be AA plus, and then AAA. The U.S. government isn't even rated AAA anymore. So again, you all are very, very highly rated. And no, I don't expect any changes to that rating.
Other questions?
Just one. You really want to take these out 30 years versus the traditional 20?
Say again?
Are we really considering doing 30-year bonds versus 20 now? I mean,
yes.
I don't, and maybe I missed it, but I don't recall Bob talking about that.
Yeah. So again, that was in conversations we had been having with Bob, going back here the past several months. Again, the initial or the original plan, to your point, was to keep with the 25-year term. However, knowing or presuming that there might be some additional projects coming down the line, we wanted to provide additional room that if those new projects pop up, that we have ample room in your, again, broader debt portfolio to layer that debt in, again, with minimal upfront impact.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just it's an additional term of interest on the taxpayers. Just because the interest rates are the same doesn't mean that we are going to pay more if we're extending these ranges.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So then,
If I may.
Yes, sir.
You're right, it is confusing to talk about the mechanism that you were describing, the max parameters resolution. It'll say 27.5 million, but we are only going to authorize or purchase rather 23 million even.
Yeah, so maybe if we jump to page 7, that'll make it a little bit clearer. So it's not necessarily as, when filing with the state, it's not necessarily as simple as just saying a total amount, right? It's not just as simple as saying 23 million versus 27.5. Rather, we need to provide them a maximum amount for every single year. So again, going out 30 years, we need to provide fluff, again, to the tune of about 20% in every single maturity. So to your point, let's say we get a premium bond structure or a par bond structure, and that just correlates to how many cents on the dollar the investors are willing to give the district. Depending on the structure and the type of bonds that are received by the district, we might have to move some of the principal, for example, from the 2051 year up to the 2049 year. Again, in order to meet the structure that we have outlined. So we just need to give ourselves room to move bonds around. I don't know if that makes it any clearer or not.
No, but if it's what our business office recommends, I can live with it.
I mean, Bob is still involved with this, and it's part of the reason why the rating call's been delayed, because I wanted Bob to be involved in that, but I didn't want to do it for reducing our rating. So I know, and you know, it makes sense to me, and I've seen in my career, I've seen these parameters before, and they're usually much higher than what's actually being requested, what's actually the bond ends up being. You know, how it falls. So it's, I confident that we're doing the right thing.
Good. And the district has done its parameters resolutions.
I recall,
yeah, in all of its past financings going back several years.
So how much more does it cost us to move it from the 25 to the 30-year, rating?
I can go back.
Approximately. I mean, just you take $23 million and you push it out 5 more years. It's just.
It would be a few $1 million over the life, probably.
Okay, over the life.
But again, it would allow you to, in the future, layer on additional debt. If we look at column 17, you see how you're at your 18 million, and then your debt drops down to about 60 million, drops down then to 10 million, and drops down then to 6 million. if you were to issue additional debt in the future, we would be able to layer in the debt where your current debt drops off. And the benefit that that has to you all is it mitigates your upfront impact. So it may cost more over the life, but from a budget perspective, you're better off because you're not having to amortize principal while your debt is still higher. Think of it almost like, I always like to think of it as like Tetris, right? You want it to be level, right? So if you have a drop off, in a perfect world, you'd like to amortize the principal when your debt drops off. Granted, you'll have to, that debt spins up interest that you'll have to pay, but that interest expense is still less than if you were to have to amortize principal in those years as well.
Other questions?
So if I remember correctly, Bob was saying that he has kept the debt service in the budget over the next few years at kind of constant.
At 18-some million,
18.7, yeah. And at the same time, and I think there was some criticism from some people about we need to increase, I think it was John was saying we need to increase that over the years, but that explains why he did not propose to increase that, because he has already created that cushion in case, because there will be other projects that will come up, and this way we can manage without going over our debt service.
And that's why I say the testament. I mean, if you're looking just at the new money, round numbers in column 2, 25 million plus round numbers 20 million plus 23 plus 20, you're able, at this point, you're able to issue $80 million of debt for new projects with no impact to the taxpayers and no impact to your budget. That's what I said. It's a real testament to the district and to you all to maintain that line item in your budget. Because as you know, once you reduce taxes, it's hard to increase them again. Once you give it up, it's hard to claw it back when you need to.
But we can ask Bob to explain that better if we need a decision.
All right.
Yeah, so again, going back to the timelines, at this point, the credit rating is now scheduled for March 20th. So again, it's a week later than what was anticipated, but that's not a problem. We would be looking then to price the bonds in, call it late March, early April, and then round numbers a month later. So late April or to mid-May. That's when settlement would occur, and that's when the funds would be available for you all to spend. That's when it hits your account, you are able to disperse those funds. Again, as I mentioned, the rest of this packet is really just backup schedules. So page 7 is the maximum parameters that will be at this point in your for your consideration at your next meeting. The following pages, so page 9 and 10, are really just the backup schedules that support the blue column on the summary page. So again, that's really all I have for tonight as far as an update. Again, happy to answer questions.
Thank you. So Tony, Dr. Franco, what you need from the board then is a vote on March 16 on the approval of parameters resolution. You don't need anything else from us tonight.
But that means we approve the bond, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you're approving that they can auction the bonds at a time that's most advantageous for the district.
And that will help us renovate.
Yeah,
How about you do all the projects that we just talked about?
There's no more questions for Garrett? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Garrett.
And again, so do we, just to make sure I'm crystal clear, so we have the board's at least informal authorization to just continue preparing all the documents, the official statement, and get us in a position for the resolution next week?
Yes.
I heard no.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Excellent.
pointed towards Brent's computer.
Sorry, that was me.
Okay, so this is, the next item was the approval of the 2023 bond resolution. There is a copy of it with the agenda. If, it, basically, as I said, it's marked at 27.5, not to exceed $27.5 million. But we, expect it to be $23 million. So we're going to ask you to approve that at the next meeting. And the fund capital improvement. The next items on the agenda are for the Council Rock 2024 prom. There's three contracts that the board is required to, or is asked to approve for the contracts. Now, these are paid for with student funds in the, but we do ask every year for the board to approve the contracts. The first contract is for the CR, the North 24 Junior Prom at the Hyatt Regency on Friday, April 19th, 2024. The second one is the South Junior Prom at Sheraton Valley Forge Hotel on Friday, April 26th. And the third one is South Senior Prom at the National Constitution Center on May 17th, 2024. The North Senior Prom do not need to have a contract approved. They are actually in a 3-year contract with the Crystal Tea Room that goes through 2024. So we don't have to approve it. So you don't have to approve anything related to that. But the contracts are in the agenda. They're pretty much the same as they usually are. I believe the only one that has a full price on it is the Sheraton Valley Forge for $34,320. That was a free book.
Question?
And that's all I have. Just talking about what we're looking for in the next month. 23-24 budget update. We're working on the budget. I'm my first time doing a budget for the school district. I have Bob help me out with it, and we're trying to keep that on track to get that done. The food service renewal contract that comes up every year. We're talking about what we're going to do. Just renewing that contract. Going forward for the next school year, and there's some discussion about that. Also, the district insurance renewals are coming up. I did meet with Seltzer, Rich from Seltzer, and we are going to go out to market for most of our insurance policies this year, so that we can try to get the best advantageous policy prices for the upcoming school year. And the 21-22 audit, which has not been completed yet, we need to get that completed by the end of the month. So I'd like to, I hope we'll have a presentation from the auditor at the next finance committee meeting for the 21-22 audit. It's been delayed because of issues that occurred with the business office, and also partially because once I let them know I was coming here, we had to stop all work on it because it would be a conflict of interest for them. But now that I'm gone, they have people who work on it to help me. So.
Great. Questions?
Could I ask for one more thing on that list, a little longer term? 5-year projections, I can list those. Real 5-year projections. So if I don't need them right away, but 5-year budget projections were something Mr. Stone did. They were elaborate. They were well thought.
Okay.
They weren't just percentage riders. They were real, and I'd like to see those. We own the software to do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to make that a priority. I can't ask you to make it a priority, but I think this board would really appreciate that.
No, definitely something I want to do.
Yeah. So.
Good. On the food service renewal, the board has been interested, like, for example, with custodial services renewal, some sort of quality assessments. It doesn't have to be, in my view, it doesn't have to be formal, but if we're going to renew a contract with food service, I think the board would like to see some indication as to our level of satisfaction. I don't know what it looks like, it's up to you all.
Dr. Sang, do we still do a food service committee?
There is a.
Have we done one recently?
There's, there's one that runs through the business office, and it's not called Food Service Committee, but they meet, I believe they meet quarterly. We have parents and other folks on that committee, and they provide feedback to us. So informally, as Mr. Tate said, we can certainly tap those folks and get some insight from their perspective.
It's not a bad thing to do.
Yeah,
No.
good, that's a great vehicle. All right, anything else? Anyone else?
Tony, welcome aboard.
Yeah, I think, good first meeting. Thank you.
I'm sure Bob's at home listening.
He's in Florida.
Listening.
No, he's not.
Listening to Hotel California.
Good meeting, Jess.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
And welcome, Dr. Lomas.
Thank you.
And welcome, Mr. Rapp.
We're good.
Very good.
Thank you.
You said this was.